Hey, I'm Mike Pekovich. I am the creative director and editor of Fine Woodworking, and I'm super happy to be hosting a special podcast where we get to peek behind the scenes at Grizzly Industrial, makers of a huge assortment of woodworking machines. So with me, I've got Rollie Johnson, a longtime contributing editor, a writer for the magazine, and our resident machinery guru when it comes to testing and making recommendations. Also, literally the author on the book on bandsaws. So, and from Grizzly, I've got Jameson Hawn. Jameson, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, before we get too much into the topic of things, so I was like doing my Google research a while back, and I knew that you were involved with Grizzly and did some video work, some overviews of machines and setups and that kind of stuff. But I found myself spending the morning watching you carving and painting trout, which was amazing. And then Rollie sent me a link saying, hey, you have to look at this. And that was a video on you making, I think it was like a life-size shark sculpture as well. So like between fishing nets and carved fish and eventually ending up at Grizzly, tell me what's going on. How did you get to doing what you're doing?
Well, I mean, basically, I've been into, doing the hobby of woodworking and also professionally, forever, since I was 18 years old and I got into the job market. And it kind of just evolved into this, where I work for the machinery, manufacturers themselves. And I'm very fortunate to have this role. And where I came from basically is custom cabinetry and fine woodworking. Got into the carving just as a side effect of that and my fishing obsession. So, and the foam carving is also just a little cheaper than wood these days, so it's a little easier. But it basically kind of all just feeds off of questions I'd have as I grew as a woodworker of, you kind of just keep getting more detail oriented, and then you go from the cabinetry side of things, which is all detail too.
Sure. And
then into the fine woodworking, and suddenly you find yourself carving.
Very cool. Well, if anyone is interested, and so not only were you carving a trout, you went out in the woods and you caught a fish. And then you carved it. Now, for me, I would have the problem just actually catching the fish may be the non-starter right there. But if anybody's interested, you have a YouTube channel, Riverbend Woodworks, where go check it out. And you'll want to be carving trout like me. So hopefully, not like me, like Jameson, but as well as I would. So getting to the topic of what we're talking about, Grizzly Industrial, the company has been around for quite a while. Can you just start and give us a little bit of background on the history of the company?
Yeah, so Shiraz Balolia is the founder of Grizzly, and he started the company back in 1983. So since then, we've grown just massively with his guidance. So he's basically our founder and guiding light basically here. He is a master woodworker, like no kidding. If you're on our YouTube channel, you can see some of the projects he undertakes are just pretty wild, and some of the most amazing finish products you can imagine. So having him at the helm has been awesome. And yeah, since 83, family owned, operated, and his son here is the COO as well. So it's a family run business, and yeah, it's all been his guidance.
Cool. It's similar to Fine Woodworking, where Paul Roman founded the magazine in 1975, basically because he was an avid woodworker and didn't have a good magazine to read. So it's cool that the head of the company was also an avid furniture maker, because I'm sure that drives a lot of decisions in the products and the quality of the products that you're making. In terms of where you're at now as a company, full disclosure, I bought a 17-inch Grizzly bandsaw 10 or 11 years ago, and I absolutely love the darn thing. And also at Fine Woodworking, I would say over the last 10 or 15 years, Grizzly machines have shown up at the top of our reviews, and Rollie can attest to this, either as best overalls or at least best values. And that to me seems like the most difficult task. Like, okay, so how do you balance coming up with a machine of a certain high quality that you want, but still keeping it at a price point that people are going to be able to afford to pay.
And that is a struggle that a lot of companies have. I think what the beauty of kind of Shiraz created here was we actually essentially cut out the middleman. If the place that people would go like to pick up a machine from, there's that markup that's included. And what he kind of did was say, I'm going to deal direct with factories. I'm going to sell it direct to consumers. And that's the model that he started then. And it's more popular now, but it's also, what he began with. And it has been a huge hit because it saves you money. That's always nice. And
Yes.
it also has us a direct connection to our factories. And we have a bunch of factories overseas that we work with, just like every company, but we work with a lot of vendors over there to really help refine our quality control. And having that interaction and that time with those companies it lets us have a huge say in the quality of product that comes out.
Cool. I mean, so if you're manufacturing overseas, it's got to be tough and super important to maintain that quality control. How do you actually go about doing that?
So we actually have one of our managers from here is actually now over there overseas. But before that, we've had quality control technicians. I think we have 13 between China and Taiwan that work directly with us. So those are our employees over there. And they're checking every shipment of bandsaws, table saws. They're doing the checks before they get containered, before they hit the water to head this direction. And that's what you need over there. And they also coordinate the things like the containers. The containers, as you might know, and a lot of folks hear the news, are a huge issue right now.
Yeah.
And they are expensive. And just coordinating, getting product in those containers, getting them moving, that's their jobs over there, and they do a great job of it.
Wow. I definitely wanted to ask you about that. I know anybody over the last year and a half who was interested in buying a piece of woodworking machinery probably faced some backlogs or back orders. It sounds like you've been experiencing that. Is that only because it's hard to get the machinery delivered, or is it because there's been an increased demand in woodworking?
That is, as we all have felt, it's pandemic related. And it's something that actually I was talking to Robert McCoy, our president of our company now, that Shiraz is semi-retired. Robert McCoy was telling me just last week that, over there, it's everything from the raw goods that were shut down for a while. It was when we saw that happening in that market, we ended up ramping up our purchasing that we built with purchasing power over there. And that ended up putting us in a great spot to get our orders in for the bandsaws, the table saws, the planers, everything, the big stuff that you're seeing now arriving. That was a year ago or plus.
Wow. Okay.
So you have to have that lead time to get on their list, to get that priority. And now we're starting to see that coming across. And that's really what he was saying. It's like we saw that coming. And also the pandemic, what's happening is it was an opportunity for a lot of people to say, step back from the job market and retire, hopefully, or semi-retire. And they took up woodworking. And here we are.
So where are you at right now? Are you able to deliver things pretty close to on time, or are folks still having to wait? Are we?
Well, we're doing our best as
Sure.
far as, the hard part is once containers, we do our spot checks, we do our look overseas.
Yeah.
They hit the water, they're on the month for water, just like any other company. Same dilemma of just distance and time. But once it gets here, it's getting it unloaded, and getting our product off the boat is easy, but then it can sit there, and we are at the mercy of shipping companies, as everyone is. And so that's just kind of what you have to deal with for back order material right now in particular.
Okay.
But as soon as, when it walks through our door into one of our, two gigantic warehouses here, I'm in Washington State, up in Bellingham at our headquarters. We also have Springfield, Missouri with, hundreds of thousands of square feet of space for warehousing.
Okay.
Once it hits our docks, we are offloading onto the next one, off to the customer, and done. Like we know they've waited.
So when something comes in, or if someone places an order, it's being shipped directly from your Washington main headquarters or the hub in Missouri.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So by and large, a lot of our larger product go to Missouri, to our huge hub there. And then like we just got, CNC machines. They've just landed here, some of our new CNCs. And it's kind of dependent on the port that they're arriving at. But yeah, we get it out the door as quickly as we get it. If it's back ordered status, absolutely.
Cool. One thing I was thinking about, I mean, we've just been getting some machines dropped off to our new soon-to-be shop at Fine Woodworking. We're very happy to finally be getting back into a shop. And you walk into the shop and there's like this giant crate sitting in the middle of the floor. And it's scary enough, even though I've got people I can say, hey, why don't you go open that and set that up? But, if I'm a woodworker in my own shop and I got a big crate, delivered right to the middle of my garage or basement, and it's my first big investment in a piece of machine, that's a scary thing. How do you help woodworkers kind of deal with that aspect of just getting it uncrated and set up?
The logistics are always step one, get the liftgate service. Getting it off the truck is number one, and safely, and confirming that your package is good to go from the carrier. Once it leaves us, we leave it in good shape. It's always confirmed that thing is looking great out of the truck.
Okay.
And that's step one for any new recipient of a new product. Once you get it, it's onto that manual. I used to be a technical writer when I started here, so I wrote manuals for 2.5 years. Everything from the uncrating, unboxing, test run, setup, operation for every type of machine, wood and metal you can imagine. And the key is just follow that manual setup guide step by step. And then when you if you run into something, we have a US-based technical support staff here that you just call that number in the manual, and you will get, during working hours or email, you can also do that.
Okay.
You will get a US-based technical support person to help you step through that.
Okay. So I'm going to give you a call and someone's going to answer. I'm going to say, what's this bolt for? You're going to say, that's really important. Don't throw that away, Mike. Just stick it on the cutter head and call it good. That's awesome, because that is sort of a scary thing. If you're a woodworker, you're not necessarily a machinist, and in terms of setting that stuff up. I actually was looking at the Grizzly YouTube channel, and you had a video on like unpacking and, more importantly, degreasing. I think you're doing like a 12-inch joiner planer or something like that. That was super cool. Do you try to do that to a lot of your different machines? Because I found that would be really helpful.
So much like you guys, we're actually in the process of really setting up an established wood shop scene here. You might see the same area that we shoot in, because that's great for customer videos and product videos. But we want to establish a wood shop here that we can navigate around for the how-tos and stuff. And really, like videos like you just saw, I try and do that for every machine that rolls in through the big bay door, because I know that anyone who has like this gigantic 37-inch drum sander behind me, there's a lot of questions that come up in the course of that. And not only are you going to read a manual, hopefully, but you're also going to hopefully,
Yeah.
Sooner or later.
There's always that. Yeah. I wrote the thing. Sometimes I'll be like, There's always that need to have your phone with you while you're there setting it up. So I love to create those kind of videos, and maybe it's not always the end result of what we're filming, but I'll take that time to film those kind of videos, and the other videographer here as well. To take those steps, because it helps cut down on customer service calls and stress. Like nobody wants to turn Christmas into a bad day.
Right. Yeah. And you don't necessarily want a lot of returns on some big machinery just because someone couldn't figure out how to get it up and running.
Exactly. And like I said, we always do our best to check machinery before it hits the water and make sure everything is ready to rock from the factory. So it's a matter of, we want it, when it arrives, that it's in good working order for you. So that's the goal.
So speaking of machinery, I was teaching last week, and one of the students in a class brought in his big, thick Grizzly catalog. And, he was like just getting into the craft, looking to, just start to invest in machinery. And his question was, what kind of bandsaw should I get? Is, 14-inch, 17, 19? And looking through the catalog, you don't have, well, here's our 14-inch, here's our 17, here's our 19. You have quite a variety of a lot of tools, whether it's 8-inch joiners or 14-inch bandsaws or 17 or 19-inch bandsaws, in a lot of configurations. What's the philosophy behind that, and how do you help someone navigate through all those choices?
Well, I mean, we have the guy who wrote the book on bandsaw etiquette here. I mean, actually, can I defer that question right off the bat?
Sure. Yeah.
I
So,
mean,
Raleigh, I'm just getting into woodworking. I want to set up a shop. I'm thinking about buying a bandsaw. Number one, is that the first machine I should be getting? And what am I getting in a machine, like I say, from between a 14-inch and say a 17 or inch bandsaw or bigger?
Well, my estimation is yes, that's the first tool, first big power tool you should buy for the shop. Because I've always said that if I could only afford one major power tool, it would be a bandsaw because of its versatility. And the cast iron 14-inch models are a great way to get into it because they don't take up a huge footprint. They can run on 110 volt power, 120 volt power. You can buy a real basic machine that still has block guides. With the cast iron, you have a good rigid upper guide post. So equipped with the right blade, you can do a pretty good job of resawing. You know, you're not going to resaw 12-inch hard maple because you just don't have the horsepower for it.
Right.
But you can do an awful lot of work with it. And I guess that's probably where a lot of the large variety of different machines comes from is as you move up the scale, you're going to look at better guides, although block guides are absolutely, efficient and sufficient.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to look at more horsepower. You're going to, just all the incremental things. And that's, I guess, probably what all the differences are between the saws, I would imagine.
So I started out with, like probably every woodworker of my generation, so to speak, with a 14-inch cast iron frame bandsaw. And that lasted me, good 20 years. I knew what it could do, what it couldn't do, and I just assumed that's what a bandsaw did. But when I actually did step up to a larger 17-inch bandsaw, to me, that was like a completely different animal in terms of quality of cut, quality of especially resawing, handling bigger stock. So is that, so what's the deciding factor? Let's say I already have a 14. What more am I going to get out of a bigger saw?
Well, really, the benefit to a bigger saw is the inertia of the wheels. Okay. You get a 17-inch saw, you got heavier wheels, and that gives you a lot of inertia. And a bandsaw blade is designed to cut at, roughly 3,600 feet per minute. And if you're relying on the electric motor to keep the RPMs up, keep them in that sweet spot, that's a tough deal. Then you have to have a lot of power. But if you've got 17-inch wheels and you've got a couple horse motor on there, you've got a pretty good resaw. When the speed of the blade fluctuates, it causes harmonic vibration in the blade. It gives you a little flutter in the cut. That's one of the reasons why the more inertia you have in these wheels, the better it can keep up the speed. Okay. When we're cutting wood, we're going through various densities. It'll cut fast, slow, fast, slow. And when it's slows down on our cut speed, but keeps the blade speed up, you get a cleaner cut. And if you could have a 36-inch wheel bandsaw, you get a really nice cut. They don't slow down for anything.
No, that's what, and I did find, my 14-inch saw, it didn't spin all that long. Once you turned it off, you could just jam a stick in there and it slowed down quite a bit. I did find with the 17-inch saw, I really liked that foot brake on the bigger saw with those wheels that tend to spin a little bit.
Well, people tend to focus on resawability, but realistically, how often do we use the maximum capacity on resaw? Not that often, because we don't have the lumber. How often do you buy 12 and 14-inch wide boards? Right. And so the real benefit is that inertia. That's just huge. Yeah.
Very cool. I want to talk to you later, Raleigh, about your recommendation for bandsaw blades, but I want to get back to talking about the subject at hand, and it's kind of goes along those lines. It has to do with joiners and planers, in that, Jameson, you have joiners and planers with straight knives, helical, and spiral cutters. So I know that the helical and spiral cutters are kind of a newer introduction to tools, is that definitely something I should step up to? And what is the difference? I never quite understood helical and spiral, because when I look at pictures, they almost look exactly alike.
They do look very similar. And as far as the like, I guess starting at like, should I buy a spiral helical style versus like a straight knife kind of general question we get, it's like, I always try and do what Shiraz has kind of harped into me here when I work with him, is saying, buy once, cry once. It's that old saying. Like it's a hard,
Yes.
it's a hard pill to swallow. Like sometimes with making that investment in a spiral, but I did that in my shop with. Actually, I know you guys have the same planer that I got, the 15-inch G10. Was it 1021 X2, which is that. I mean, it's a beast of a planer, and that's the idea. Is like you kind of if you invest in that spiral, what you're getting is just time in the shop that you save. And I mean, the finish you get from straight knives, sharp straight knives, is phenomenal.
Sure.
And I mean, it's glass out of the machine. It's just
when they're sharp.
When they're sharp.
Well, they're sharp, yeah.
Yeah. And good example. I actually hit a bullet in a piece of figured maple just the other day when I was planing it down. I had no idea what just happened, and I nicked the insert. Well, I just rotated it through, and well, it nicked it bad enough to replace the insert because I didn't want to have weird movement. But I mean, that's the first bullet I've ever hit, but it happens. Wow. So if you hit that with a straight knife, you either completely shot the knife, or you have to completely resharpen. And it's, for me, as a father of two and full-time job and everything, it's spending time in my shop is critical to my happiness. So spending time sharpening knives, probably not the thing I want to focus on. So I will say that to folks constantly, is like, it's time in the shop, it's ease of use, and the carbide cutters that are in spiral and helical are insanely sharp and last forever. For a guy like me who's just out there from like 8 o'clock until midnight most nights, thankfully, that's huge. Like I can just run my machine and go.
Yeah, so back up just a sec, because you mentioned insert, and you're referring to the carbide cutter. Explain to what those are, and obviously we know what a straight knife is, but explain what that type of cutter head is.
So what you're looking at is like spiral and helical, same looking design more or less, but you have the insert itself. So you have a 15 by 15 by 2, we'll call it millimeter insert, which is carbide tipped, razor sharp on all four sides. That's indexable because it has a little star that you could release it and rotate it around 90 degrees at a time. Now, the way those are set into the actual channels that are CNC milled into that cutter head is the difference between helical and spiral. So spiral being, think of it like a mini straight knife. It's straight on with your workpiece coming in.
Okay.
In that channel, so the orientation. But a helical has a slight shearing effect. Same basic idea. It's a shearing, but it's canted slightly with the channel that it's aligned with.
Okay.
So it creates those small chips, and that's a huge benefit too. Straight knife, you're just smashing that knife into it to create a large chip that can clog dust collectors. And the small helical and spiral also gives you a tiny little chip, but a bunch of them. So they go right through your dust collection.
Okay. So do you have, Rollie, are you familiar with both the spiral and helical? Have you noticed a difference in performance between those two style of cutter heads?
Yeah, the spiral, you can still realize some tear out simply because it doesn't do that shearing cut as the helical does. What you gain is the small chip, and you gain the ease of being able to replace a damaged insert. So those are two huge things right there. One of the downfalls of planers for a lot of newbies is they don't change blades often enough, and they suffer a lot of tear out, a lot of real bad results because they don't sharpen their blades. But with an insert cutter, it's easy to rotate a cutter if you damage one. But the big thing is that the spiral will truly give you a shear cut, where the helical will give you a true cut, shearing cut. And that's huge. It's absolutely huge. But they do take more power.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because you always have the cutter head involved with the wood. With straight knives, you got 120-degree rest between each knife, and that helps keep the motor on power. Okay. But when you dig a insert cutter, then there's always a cutter involved with the wood, so the motor is always under load, so you consume a little more power. Okay. And when you push a board over a joiner, you're going to wonder why you didn't wax those tables, because it really seems to drag.
Okay, interesting.
And it's just the added power it takes for you to push a board over a spiral or helical head.
Cool. And one question I get quite a bit, and I kind of have the same question, is that I had an old planer with straight knives, and I replaced that with a helical cutter head a while back. But my joiner still has straight knives, and I get that from a lot of people. Do I need that on both my joiner and my planer?
Need?
Yes.
I mean,
yes, you need it. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. Stop right there. I need it. Okay. Let me write this down.
Yeah.
So.
Well, an example, Michael, and you run into this, you'll be joining the edge of a cherry board, and they have those really tiny little pin knots, and you've got a straight knife, and you feel that little nudge, and you know you just have a nice little 1/8-inch divot.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to join all that up. Well, with the helical cut, the odds are really slim that that'll happen. It'll just shear right through it very cleanly.
Right.
So there's a difference. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. And so Jameson, you offer combination machines, joiner planer machines as well. Mm-hmm. And I would think that would be a no-brainer since you're doing double duty on that cutter head. It seems to make a lot of sense to get a carbide cutter head in that guy there as well.
It really does. Like I've actually just shot a couple product videos and how-tos with our planer joiner combo. It's actually a monster. It's a 12-inch, and that thing, I mean, if space is your issue, like that thing on a mobile base can live in a 2-car garage, and you have massive capacity. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's, for me, I have a 24 by 24 shop. It's not very big, and I have to be very careful how I place things. So that's always a consideration. It's also power needs. I mean, that requires a large startup, a bit of power. So having that on hand is essential. But it can take 2 machines, put them into one, and it functions beautifully.
Cool.
And you have a 12-inch joiner.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like, it's like the first thing is, well, I only have a 12-inch planer. Yeah, but you have a 12-inch joiner.
12-inch joiner, yeah.
And you guys added, the Fine Woodworking Shop's going to have a 12-inch joiner, right?
Why, yes, it is. Yeah.
Yes,
that was like,
right.
It's like filling out that Christmas wish list. It's like, okay, what tools do you want? And you don't have to pay for them, Mike. Well, 15-inch helical head planer, 12-inch helical head joiner, big old drill press, and let's just keep going from there. So,
hey Mike, can you fit another 12-inch joiner in there, please, and just put my address on it?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll just hide it in the corner. So obviously, in the shop, we want to have a shop which is within the realm of what a standalone hobbyist, aspiring professional woodworker is going to have in their small shop. So, and I think, these tools are, 12-inch joiner. Okay. That's sort of on the high end of things, but it's super nice. I don't think like you said, you may cry a lot once, but you're going to be smiling for a long time.
If you think about like the longevity of your machine itself, you buy a joiner like that once, maybe in your lifetime, but 20 years, if you figure, you can keep them we offer parts. We have 1 million parts on hand. We offer parts for our products, even ones that we no longer carry. We try and stock as much as we can because we're thinking like lifespan of the purchase. And when you're talking about a 12-inch joiner, it's a big ask. And the result is you can get a lifetime of use out of that machine. So if you factor that in, it really, joy of use, so ease of use, safety in larger machine with bigger motor, there's a lot of factors that you can roll into that as saying that's actually a better purchase than going from a 6-inch to an 8-inch to a 12-inch and working your way up through like the bandsaw, the bandsaw discussion there. I did the same thing. 14-inch bandsaw. Now I'm at the 17-inch bandsaw. I'm going, 19 inch.
19 is awfully nice. You guys have a nice 19-inch bandsaw.
I need a bigger shop before I work on that. But so in terms of developing new tools, how often are you doing that? That's got to be an involved process, because that kind of, everything from design to retooling to coming out with a new product. What's the deciding factor? Are you just looking for things to kind of plug into your lineup that you don't have? Are you listening to what woodworkers are wanting and asking for? How does that work?
It's a combination of everything you can imagine. There's sounding boards from like social media, or the Grizzly enthusiast page is just users of our tools, and you can go on there and like, I love to just chat with people on there about what they're seeing, what they want to see from us content wise. But as far as new products go, it's just keeping a pulse on that stuff that our product team upstairs does, and also overseas, our manager over there is working one-on-one with our product development team. That's their job, is to say, where is the trend going? And we're seeing a lot of that with CNC machine. We've been working on that line for a while now, but with like the South Bend line and, the actual products themselves, we have countless products coming in that we test and we beat up here in our quality control on site, because it's a year process between when we get sample one of something.
Right.
And even if it's a factory we worked with in the past many times, it's still, there's iterations, up to 3 iterations.
Wow.
And you're talking like a year span before it goes from concept of actual good machine to when it lands in our catalog or online. So there's a big span of time there that we get to directly communicate with the factory.
So so it sounds like all the testing is in-house. Do you ever do like a beta test, get woodworkers to get their hands on your stuff? How does that? Yeah, okay, I figured that was the case. That's cool.
I have the coolest job here, other than the boss man himself. Like, no kidding. I literally get to be filming with machines all day. I get to help answer tech support. I get to do help with manuals, and also get to hang out with the product team and kind of quiz them and see the new stuff that comes through the door. And every now and then I get handed stuff to actually just run through the paces. And that is like the coolest day.
Awesome.
It's pretty good stuff.
Awesome. So what's the future looking like for you? I know, for us with the magazine, we're dealing with pretty much solid wood furniture makers, standalone shops. So we're not really, we don't cover CNC all that much. That is an area you're moving into. Who do you see using that tool, and like, what are they using that for?
Well, for the home hobbyist, it's, there's CNC is absolutely something you can, the home, or leading into professional woodworker, like your guys who you speak to with your magazine, is the folks that are doing the heirloom quality pieces. And, the CNC realm does overlap with that pretty well. And you can create beta projects by hand, and then you can figure out what works, what doesn't work, and you can match styles, and then you can reproduce that with something like the CNC. And you can now do it like with our 47 by 47 inch bed CNC. You can do that, very quickly in your small shop. And that's a huge benefit to home hobbyists leaning toward heading to the pro level. But there's also, we have CNCs up to gigantic sizes of 5 by 10 foot.
Wow.
There's, those are true production machines. And
right.
That's, fine woodworking too. We have cabinet shops in town here who do the highest end stuff you can imagine, and they're running CNC machines.
Cool. Now, do you see that as a growth area in not just for your company, but within the industry as well?
Yes. And it's just, the craftsmanship is always there. It's just a different way to approach it. There's always going to be an artisan eye to what we all do, to how we assemble a product. It's just, if you can, while doing that and paying the bills and doing all these things, there's always going to be a need for the craftsman part of it, and also rolling in that production side so you can keep the lights on in the shop is always a good thing.
Right.
But it's a learning thing too, because you guys could probably speak to, like, every day you step in the shop, you're learning something. And when you put a CNC machine in there, suddenly the learning curve gets real steep.
Yeah. I think it's I think of woodworking as sort of an exercise in creative problem solving, and that whether it's a CNC, a hand plane, or a table saw, it's just another tool, and you got to figure out how to get what you want out of it and how to do what you want with it. So you had mentioned the South Bend line, and that actually kind of segues. We collected some questions from some of our listeners, and one of them was specifically about the South Bend line. Will it ever, will it eventually cover all the woodworking machines? But that was sort of new to me. Can you just explain what that is?
Yeah, so South Bend as a company, it's been around for more than 100 years, and it's been around in the realm of metalworking, so high-end precision metalworking. And so there's a feel to a South Bend machine in the metal industry that those who have run it know it. And Shiraz, actually the founder of Grizzly, bought South Bend. And it became, when he's semi-retired more or less, it became his goal to apply that kind of precision to and like degree of excellence with the machine to the South Bend woodworking lineup. And that was why you don't see a massive array like you see with Grizzly, where we have every size imaginable of machine. What you see is very specific, insanely high tolerance machine that's ready for like a professional grade shop. Okay. And that was his whole intent. Like, we slowly are expanding that line to encompass all woodworking machines. Okay. But that's just because we are so exacting with those tolerances.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Rollie, did you look at the recent South Bend bandsaw?
Yeah, I have it here. Mm-hmm.
And you liked that quite a bit.
Yeah,
is that why it's still there?
Yeah, right. I like the wheels. There's a lot of cast iron there, and and the fit and finish is exceptional on it. It's very, very nice bandsaw.
Very cool.
Yeah.
What was amazing to me, there was the break, but that, like, there is, when I had it next to our 17-inch we have over in our other shop, it's the 17-inch, 513 X2 BF is what it's called, 17-inch bandsaw. The weight of the South Bend is like 250 pounds more.
Oh, no.
Yeah. It's stout.
No vibration there.
Wow. No, runs very smooth. Yeah.
Very cool. This is a really cool question, because this was a popular feature that I think everybody on the staff took advantage of it at some point when they were setting up their shops. You had a cool little shop layout tool on your website. That was great. You don't have that up and running anymore.
No. Okay. Unfortunately, we've been, as you can imagine, like constant website updating and just needing to get people the machines and everything in front of them the way they want. That was kind of one of those things that was always kind of put to the back burner a little bit, even though it is a super useful tool. It ended up falling out of sync with the manpower it takes. So like every one of those machines you would see in that planner was a 1-to-1 scalable thing you could move in that environment.
Oh yes, that was really neat.
Yeah, and that's, unfortunately, it took like literally going in and creating those one at a time. And when you have 15,000 products, about a third of those that would end up on that page, it just was a huge time crunch for our folks here to actually upkeep that annually.
Sure, totally understandable. It was well loved when you had it. Maybe keep that in the back of your mind if you ever have some downtime. If you don't have enough work to do, get that up and running again.
I'm sure my boss and the IT manager will see this, so I'm sure they'll be on it.
Very cool. So overall, what do you see looking forward? What do you see the direction the company is going in? Is it just sort of maintaining your current audience? You're trying to expand your audience? What are we going to see in the next 5 or 10 years from Grizzly?
From Grizzly, I personally, and from what I gather upstairs, it's what we want to see is pushing into the CNC market. And because it really is, like, I mean, we have done a lot of work over the last 38 years to develop products, quality control check those, get them to the market, and then have them into the hands. And you see them everywhere. We're so fortunate to have that market for our tools. But that's one that we think we can give the support and back up the product for something like a CNC, production quality or even the home hobbyists, like that's what we offer, is that support, and that's what you would expect from us. So that's where I hope, we could go with our lineup, and of course always trying to refine and becoming, the knowledge source. That's one of my goals here as a videographer here, is to help. I do this for a living, but I also go home and do this too. This is my passion, and to be able to share what I know, and as you guys do, it's just a chance to help everyone else grow, whether they're retiring now or whether they're 20 years old and buying their first bandsaw. I mean, it really is like our chance to grow in all these elements, to get everyone from the technological side to the hand plane side. I mean, and everything in between.
That's really cool. I mean, it's not surprising, or shouldn't be surprising, but it's really nice to see that, just like fine woodworking, there aren't a bunch of corporate wonks and bean counters driving the direction of a company. It's driven by people who are passionate about the craft, and it's like, oh, that's pretty cool.
I have the absolute fortune of working with Shiraz upstairs. He has his own shop at home, a beautiful shop, but he has an amazing shop here as well, which you'll see in some of his videos. And I film with him constantly in there as he's creating products. And the guy knows an incredible amount about everything he touches in that shop. So we're driven by using the product, and we innovate that way too.
Awesome. That's great. Well, thanks very much for sitting in with us. This was great. Hopefully we can talk with you again, and maybe next time you can be doing some trout carving demos for us as well.
I would love to.
That'd be awesome. And make sure I get your personal home number, so if we're setting up our stuff in the shop, I can just give you a buzz one night and talk about getting something set up or cord wired or anything like that.
I absolutely would love to help in any way. And something, I guess, maybe if we could throw it out there.
Yeah.
We listen on social media, we listen in our technical support calls, and I listen down here in the video studios when there's comments on our videos or your videos and stuff where, we do listen to that, and we take that information, like how-tos that people want to see and require. And we want to actually really help folks kind of work through their machinery and get comfortable and have it last them, 20 years. That's our goal. And so that's something maybe that folks, if they're watching this, they can comment, and we do try our best to do that down here, to respond.
Awesome. Cool. And I absolutely have no idea how to do it, but I have a feeling I can get Ben to put some links down below on this podcast. If you have any questions, if you want to get in touch with the folks at Grizzly, questions, comments, suggestions, all that good kind of stuff. That's awesome. Thanks for joining us, Rollie. Thanks for joining us again. It's good to see you. And
nice to see you too.
Thanks for chiming in.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So this has been great. We've been hanging out with Rollie Johnson and from Grizzly, Jameson Hawn. Thanks again for helping us out, and hope to talk to you soon. Thanks very much.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. Take care, guys.